Hi, everybody. I'm Jasmine, the host of Everyone is Addicted. I wanted to come on and give a little disclaimer, letting everyone know that the topics we to discuss in this show can be a little bit delicate, just to give you a warning. Also, the interviews are for educational and entertainment purposes and are not affiliated with Rogers or their morals and their mission statement. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Everyone is Addicted. Today, Darryl has graciously come on to share his knowledge and his experience with addiction. Um, He has quite the experience, I shall say, but I won't tell you too much. It's his story. So, welcome, Darryl, and take it away.
Hey, thank you, Jasmine. I appreciate you having me on your show today. And yeah, it's quite a story. You're right. Um, my oldest son Chase, he was a great kid growing up. He was diagnosed ADD, ADHD early on, and there's a correlation there between people who have that diagnosis and addiction. And there are a lot of different theories about why that correlation is there. But Chase was a good kid. Didn't he? He was quiet, easygoing, friendly. Had a interesting sense of humor and kept people laughing, and just really a joy to be around. He was a good athlete. In terms of the ADHD or ADD. There were some times when he was hyperactive, but it wasn't like an everyday kind of thing. It was more just focused issues in the classroom. But like I said, he was a good athlete, small for an athlete, but quick and very agile. Excelled all the sports he played. Settled on football as he entered high school, football and track and field, but mostly football. And was really in. Oh, and by the way, he became an Eagle Scout too. Both my boys did. Chase has a younger brother, 7 years younger, and both Eagle Scouts. Chase loved the outdoors,
So,
but
good boys at the core of it, right? Good boys.
oh yeah, 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 very good. But in the middle of the 10th grade, Chase began to exhibit some behaviors that were troubling to me. He had always been very honest about everything, and I caught him in a couple of lies about a few different things, and that was just really heartbreaking that he lied to me. And like other little warning signs, like he was changing the people that he associated with at school. His grades were dropping all of a sudden. He was failing one class. He'd never had any issues like that with his grades before. He was becoming more rebellious at home. So all of these warning signs, I didn't know what to do about it. I tried to have conversations with him about it. That was not bearing any fruit. He wasn't changing. His behavior continued to sort of spiral down in a bad direction. And um, so I have a military background. I thought that especially with the ADD diagnosis, I thought the um, discipline and the structured environment of a military school would be good for him. So we transferred him in the middle of his junior year. He transferred to a military school. It was about a 2 hour drive from our home, where it was a boarding school.
Mm.
And so he got into trouble while he was there. Nothing, no legal issues or anything like that. But got into a lot of trouble, broke the rules there. And,
Mm.
but, he did bring up his grades. He had an outstanding senior year of football while he was there, and he graduated. And, there were a couple of schools, because of his size, like 5'10", 150, 155 pounds, right in there. He was not a Division I prospect, but there were some schools on the Division II level in terms of athletics that were interested in him. And so he accepted an offer from one school out of state to attend college there and play football for them. And when he arrived there is when things really got off track. Almost immediately began to associate with people who were abusing drugs and alcohol. And
That's why I say I was drinking a lot at that age too, but I
Mhm.
stayed home to go to college, and I think it was one of the things that I was why I'm still here, because I just know once you get out in that world with no structure and no guidance from somebody that could guide you like your parents or anybody you can truly confide in, you just I don't know, you just find those people that are feeling the same way you are, and then that's when
Yeah.
the spiral starts, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, he went from that, having us to kind of hold him accountable at home to the military school, which was a very structured, very disciplined environment, into just all this freedom. And I think he just didn't really know how to handle all of that freedom. And there was a lot of things going on internally with him. I didn't just discover until later. Really, it was just about 6 months ago. My wife found a journal entry of his from when he was in high school, where he was basically saying he just felt socially, like a misfit, like he just didn't fit in anywhere.
Fully,
And
I can get that 110%. And that's also what leads you to those people that aren't the best people,
yeah,
because I, from talking to psychologists and stuff, they say that it's usually the kids that have something troubling them that to end up coming together and doing troubling things together because their minds are in the
mhm,
same place,
mhm.
right? And you
Yeah.
don't notice it. Like my mom, I remember my mom like hitting the back of my head trying to get me to spit pills at one time. Like it's
Mhm,
just you don't always know what's going on in your child's
mhm,
head. And I have two young children, and it scares the hell out of me. Just even like listening to you say this, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I pray like every day, like please don't let them turn out like me and their dad. Please,
mhm, mhm. Yeah. It's what's really surprising about that journal entry is that he had a lot of friends who thought he was popular, he was really popular, and they thought he was funny and a lot of fun to be around. And I mean, who knew that internally he was having all of these issues with self-confidence? And I mean, I detected it. I detected it because I think in some respects, and at least in that respect, we were a lot alike. Because particularly when I was his age, I had a lot of self-confidence issues, but I never used drugs or alcohol. It just, I just grew out of it eventually. It took a lot of hard work on my part. But um, yeah. So he dropped out in the of college in the early on in the second semester of his freshman year. Came back home, immediately gravitated to a rough crowd at home. Would be gone for days at a time. I would not tell us where he was or what he was doing
I
or who
did
he
that
was
to my
with.
dad too. So just
Mhm.
listening to you, I'm just realizing now how my dad's passed, but how much crap I must have put him through just disappearing for like 3 days because I like my parents separated right when I went to college. So
Mhm.
um it was difficult for me, and I didn't have the coping mechanisms, so I expressed it in the same kind of way, and it's it's like the I wish I would have just stuck to the stability, because the stability is the thing that keeps you from like its structure is I think the cornerstone of being able to live in a proper manner. And I'm not saying like faith or this or that. I mean like being able to cope, being able to understand what's right and wrong, what your values are, not going against your values, not trying to people please people. It's
Mhm.
and the
Mhm.
structure helps you do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So there was a point there where my wife, she really was trying to set the boundaries with them, and she and I agreed on this, but it was really her idea that, like, look, if you're going to live here, you're not going to college, you're not working, and I had tried to encourage him, to find work, and I threw out several different ideas, but he was just not interested. But her boundaries were, if you're going to live here, you have to let us know if you're going to be overnight. Let us know, give us some idea of where you are, when we can expect you back, that sort of thing.
That
And he
was the
wouldn't,
structure I had with my mom home, but my dad worked all the time. So with my mom not home, I
right?
didn't have that structure anymore or the boundaries because he just didn't have the time to enforce them, you know?
Hmm.
So like that's you need that one like yeah, that's why I think two parent homes are better because yeah, have both parents to be able to talk to you from their own experiences. Plus, the boundaries are double time. You know, it's not just like, oh, mom said this, but dad, who cares, right? But no,
Right.
mom and dad say this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, that's huge. That's one of the things that I notice a lot with families is that quite often, I think I agree with you that it's better to have both parents, to have two parents, two-parent home when possible. But it's quite common that the two parents don't agree on the way to set and maintain the boundaries, and that creates a problem too. So, when you can get both parents pulling together, when you have two parents in the home and both are pulling together, makes a huge difference, in terms of setting the boundaries and communicating those effectively. But yeah, Chase, he would not abide by the boundaries. And one day he came home and he had been gone for 3 days without any communication. He would not reply to any of our text messages. He wouldn't take our calls. So he showed up at home, and just a friend, drove up and dropped him off, and he came to the front door, and I wouldn't let him in because I felt like to let him in at that point would be to continue to I would be contributing to his self-destructive behavior, enabling it. And so he got back in the car and rode off with that friend. That was really heartbreaking for me. And but I kept up with him online, because I would see his post on social media, and the posts were really troubling because he was very pale, glassy-eyed looking in the photos, rail thin. I mean, he wasn't a real big kid to begin with. Now he's very skinny. Some posts with photos of him in a hotel room. A
Those
bunch of
are
different.
no. I
Yeah.
in my town, that's where all the drug deals go and
Oh
where all the
yeah.
drug
Yeah.
dealers live. That's like a big no. I
Oh
actually
yeah.
just
Yeah.
had a guest who had been sober for a very long time. They condemned his apartment, put him in a motel in that kind of area, and he'd been sober for 13 years and now he's in rehab. His wife just messaged me because I wanted him to be on my show, right? And I
Hmm.
was like, I knew that was going to happen because you cannot. She was in the hospital at the time. He was sitting there by himself. It's all around him. It's a dangerous, dangerous situation to be put in those motels.
Oh
Dangerous.
yeah. 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 At one point, I didn't realize this. So I had a custodial bank account with Chase, and I didn't realize I had not cut off his, ability. So that was part of how he was able to afford those
Yeah.
hotel rooms. So as soon as I realized that, I cut off his access to that account. But I mean, you could just tell there were a lot of kids in the hotel room, and they were all strung out on drugs, laying across the bed. So, I became alarmed about his condition, and I called an intervention company. And it's just because I had run across the show intervention a few times on TV. I did not
My
really. Yeah, go
My
ahead.
song at the beginning of this is from Intervention because
Okay.
I love that show. It's
Hmm.
something that is near and dear to my heart because of my journey, I guess. And I
Hmm.
even talked to a few ex people that were on the show about maybe coming on my show because of updates of them doing better and stuff. But that show really does bring to light what an intervention looks like, right? Because otherwise, I wouldn't have really known what that looked like. And you do need a mediator because the family's just going to be, F you and right?
Right. Yeah, the only caveat I will throw in there, I only watched the show a few times, and I'm glad I did because it did kind of plant that seed in my mind about, maybe this is one solution. I think, the way, and I do interventions now, and I'll get to that eventually, but the way that we do them and the way the show looks, of course, with any kind of TV show, a lot of times you have to kind of create some drama, you know what I mean?
Oh
And
yeah, no, we intervened on my daughter's father, his mom, and I twice. It was nothing like the show, but it,
right.
like you said, it plants that seed of the idea of maybe like telling them how we truly feel about this going on.
Mm.
Maybe it'll get them there. He'd go to
Yeah. Yeah.
detox, last a day, and leave. So
Hmm.
it's just, he just doesn't want it. He's victim mentality at this point. So we're just waiting for him to come around to realize that we all make our own choices, whether you want to blame me for it or not, or blame the fact that my dad died. It was my dad and you're using, so I don't get that. But yeah,
There can definitely be some drama, but I try to always de-escalate things. And in the drama, if it's coming from anywhere, it's going to be coming from the addicted individual, not from the family. I don't allow the family to really engage in the drama, it's a very loving and compassionate approach, and but yeah, it's quite often, I mean, there is a little drama from the addicted individual because they can feel the boundaries closing in, right? And they're sort of resisting that. But in terms of, let's see, back to the story with Chase, we did decide to have an intervention. I talked it over with my wife, and we had the intervention. And guess what? He was not excited about going, and he was very resistant. It took a long time for him to finally agree. Okay, I'll go. But then he went to pack a bag, and he went to the bathroom, and I reached for the doorknob. I was obviously not going to go in the bathroom with him, but I heard the water turn on, and I tried to turn the doorknob. Well, he had gone out the window,
yeah,
and yeah, that's not an uncommon thing
no.
with interventions. It's pretty common, that they find a way to go out a window somewhere,
I
but.
think of it like in the terms of this, like with my worked everything out with the mortgage, and they show up at our house and they're like, you have to get out within 15 minutes, even though we already had pre-approved free fight like finance and everything. We're just waiting
Mhm.
for the mortgage to go through. And it's that anger of somebody telling you that you need to do something and you're not ready to do it yet.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's just
Yeah,
from my perspective.
I always try to approach that from a perspective of, especially the way I help parents or family members craft their letters, and the way we communicate it is like, um, you know, we don't tell them they need to go to treatment, but what we'll say is, we love you, and here are all the great things we see about you. Lately, we've seen a change in your behavior. This is troubling for us. And so, um, and basically, are going to communicate that we're changing the boundaries, and here's what the new boundaries look like. And we're setting these boundaries because we care about you. Now, here's an option, and your option is treatment, and you get to choose. And that's kind of how we present it. But yeah, Chase, he did come back and that day, and he did go to treatment that day,
Like
got
that's
on
what I
there.
meant, but you need like a little bit of time to think, and I think that's the overwhelming part at first, and that's why they have to escape because they're like, I don't know, and then it's like think about it for 24 hours, maybe change your mind. Well, it would for me. I
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
wanted to go to rehab, but I had small children and a dad with cancer, and I couldn't really go away, so I had to do outpatient through a methadone.
Uh-huh.
So I was always like people who were offered rehab. I'm like, why wouldn't you take it?
Yeah, there's always, I think in the mind, and I've never been addicted to drugs or alcohol. So I can't completely understand, but I think I understand. I think I have an understanding that there's once in most people they reach a point where there's a part of them that wants help,
Hmm.
but then there's another side that's like it's a really scary thing to give up, to think that they imagine all of these things about treatment that aren't true.
Withdrawal that you think that you're going to go through and how sick you're going to be, and like you
Yeah,
said, the myths about how they're going to treat you, or
yeah.
all kinds of stuff. Like I know, like my brother-in-law went to like 3 or 4 different treatments, and he would say that the same thing. It was just the same things that he disliked about them the first time, but every other time he went, didn't fix it either, because you have to be sick and tired of being sick and tired to fully give yourself to a program.
Yeah, and I think that brings up another really good point in that families really, I like longer term programs, just
So do
because
I.
it did this problem didn't happen overnight,
No,
and it's going to take some time to really to start to heal, and so I like a longer term
I
program.
do
And
too. I had a friend who went, she could only go away for 21 days because of her son and work. She came back, and because of the structure that it provides at the rehab center, that she
Mhm.
doesn't have that structure anymore. It's making her struggle way harder to stay sober than it was when she was there. And it's like it's I don't know, it's the structure that helps. And I like the
Yeah,
14-month programs, because then you get the first half of delving into it, the second half living it. Like that's
yeah,
what I totally agree with you. The long-term programs are far better, far better
yeah,
with success rates too.
yeah. I agree. Um, Yeah, and I think that it's really good for the families to spend some time, not to be in too big of a rush, to spend some time really analyzing the different programs, and comparing and trying to find the best fit for their loved one. So Chase did go to a 30-day program. I did not. I was just kind of in panic mode. I did not understand anything about addiction or about treatment at the time. And he went to a 30-day program. Then he did go to a halfway house. And unfortunately, a lot of the halfway houses that he entered were poorly managed. That's another place where,
It could be
just doing some research can help out a lot.
some halfway houses are run really well, and like
Yep.
I said,
Yep.
very structured, and other
Mhm.
ones are not. Like the
Yeah.
ones
Yeah.
that my daughter's father went to, you could still smoke pot, and I don't think like that, no.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
I
not
I
good.
have I have my opinions of like this, like same thing with rehab. The more structure you can put into somebody's life for longer and take them
Hmm.
out of the negative part of their life, the more they're going to see and learn about themselves without all the noise.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I truly believe structure is the best course for anything. Like, I mean, when I switched schools because I was being bullied, I went to a Catholic high school, and they had far more structure, and those were two of the best years of my teenage life, because I felt the structure and I succeeded, and I just felt so much better. And
Hmm.
that's why I like the longer term programs, as well as sober living if it's done properly, because it really does truly help. But I'm sorry
Hmm.
for cutting you off on that
No,
one.
no, that's okay. That's okay. We're having a good discussion here. These are good. These are good points. Um, so Chase got I got a call one night. He really found what I felt like was the best of all the sober living programs he had been in, and was doing well there, it seemed. But I got a call from the guy that managed that house, and I had established a relationship with that guy. I liked him. But, I think he really made an error here, and not knowing any better, I went along with it. He just called me and said, Mr. Rogers, Chase's behavior is just out of control, and, we're kicking him out of the house, I'm perfectly good with all of that. But he's like, you should probably come down here and pick him up, because he's going to be on the street. Well, I did. That was the mistake I made. That's what I would caution parents against right there, because him moving back in at home was not a good situation. Um, so just to kind of get to closer to the end of the story, he did live at home for a while. At one point, he and I had a little bit of a falling out. He left and moved in with a young woman. She was 18. He was 20 at the time. And so, he had a car that I had withheld from him. But when he got back from treatment, he had asked me for the car, and I said, Chase, here's what you need to do. You go to IOP, you sign up for IOP, you get a job, you show me you can keep the job, I'll let you have the car. And so I did, and eventually signed the title over to him. It did the car. My mother left a handwritten note that he was to get the car, and so, but I had the title. The title was in my name, but I did eventually sign it over to him. Another mistake, but um,
Well, we
he
can't
did
go
every.
back, right? You can't think of
That's
it like
right.
a
Yeah,
mistake, but we can't go back. We're only trying to do our best for our children and what we think is right. And we can't see inside their head. So we're thinking, okay, you've done
yeah.
this, you've accomplished this. Okay, you know?
Yeah, yeah. But I think it's good to point these things out so that parents can learn, and
Hmm.
not make some of the same mistakes I made. I don't beat myself up over it. I'm past that. I can't go back and change it. You're right. So he was allowing her to drive the car some. She did not have a driver's license. I knew they were both driving impaired at times because he was beginning to slip. I could just see he was beginning to slip. Um, and he finally came to me one day. He said, Dad, I'm hanging around a rough crowd again. I'm headed in a bad direction. I'm like, yeah, I kind of figured that. And he said, I don't know how to get away from these people except to move. He said, so I've taken a job transfer to Florida back to the area where I was in treatment. He told me when he was planning to leave. And my wife made Chase promise he would come by and have a meal with us before leaving for Florida. Well, the day came that he was supposed to come by and eat with us, and he didn't show up. It was getting later in the afternoon, so we all moved to the living room, or yeah, to the living room to just talk, and we're just hanging out. My wife Kim and I and our younger son, he was in the eighth grade at the time. We were all in the living room just talking a little bit, and I had a phone call from a friend, and so I go outside, but just to have some privacy on the phone call. And while I'm outside, it was a beautiful day out, May 29th, 2014. Out on the front lawn, and a police cruiser pulled up to the curb in front of our house. And so I met the officer in our driveway, and that's where he told me that there had been a bad wreck out on I-40, and Chase had died at the scene. Um,
I'm
so,
so sorry for that. Like, I mean, I've lost like my spouse. He survived, but he had an OD where they had to stay at the scene because they thought he was gonna die. I
mm,
that that's traumatic, but that's just my spouse. That's not my child. Like, that is the call that you never ever want to get.
yeah,
Ever.
yeah, yeah.
I commend you
Uh,
on being able to share this with us because it is something that is definitely personal and emotional. So I appreciate it.
oh yeah, yeah. Thank you. Well, it's been 11 years, and it's not something you ever get over. I've sort of built a muscle now around being able to share it. I do get it really emotional sometimes.
I'm looking
Um,
at my dad's hat that sits behind here, and I'm like, I'm gonna put it on with my dad now because of this.
yeah.
I keep him with me. I don't know. I'm an only child, and it was me and him very close. So yeah,
Mhm.
he's my motivation, even though he's not here, I guess, too, right?
Yeah, yeah, I get that. I have memorabilia that belongs to Chase that I keep close by, and um, so the officer he accompanied me inside and where I broke the news to my wife and our other son, and of course we cried for a long time, and we found out that, there apparently had been a big going away party the night before, and Chase and some of his friends were at this party and consumed all kind of drugs and alcohol. Woke up the next morning feeling hungover, and they decided to go to a park near home and smoke some marijuana there in the park to help cope with their nausea. And there in the park, the young woman that he had known that he had dated, that they roomed together at one point, she was there and smoked with them, and he allowed her to get behind the wheel of his car. They had had a bad breakup, and we were surprised that they were together, but he allowed her to drive his car, and
Alcohol stays in your system far longer than you think it does. I had to take a
mm,
back on track program. So if you were drinking the night before, you should not drive for 2 full days because it's
mm,
still in your system. But they wouldn't know that, right? But
right.
that's what
Well,
that leads to.
yeah, and then they had the marijuana there they smoked in the park, which is another impairing substance, and so they they left there. He allowed her to get behind the wheel of his car, and he got in the front passenger seat. It was his car, but he got in the front passenger seat. Another young man got in the back seat. They left the park. They stopped for a quick bite to eat and headed right out onto I-40 eastbound rush hour traffic. They were running about 70 in a curve, and she lost control of his car, left the road, struck a tree, and Chase died at the scene. Um, it took about an hour to get the three of them out of the vehicle, and then the emergency services, they transported the two survivors, the driver and the back seat occupant, to the hospital right away with serious injuries. But they recovered over the next several weeks to the extent that they could return home, continue their recovery at home. But then 7 months after the wreck, and just a few weeks prior to what would have been her first court appearance, the young woman who was driving Chase's car that day died after a fire broke out in her apartment. And the fire chief said that based on their investigation, he believes that she poured gasoline all over the floor of her apartment and stood in the middle of it and ignited it. There
Probably
were,
from the guilt of what she did to Chase, that was her way of taking her life, you know?
yeah,
I
yeah.
would think.
There were two suicide notes that were found. There was one online and then a suicide note that somehow miraculously survived the fire in her apartment. And so, um, really, we had gotten to know her mother a little bit. After Chase died, she came to visit us, and we got to know her a little bit. And really nice lady. And then her daughter died, and it just kind of reopened the wounds, and we're grieving again. And just the whole thing was very tragic. And um, unfortunately, this is quite often addiction leads to these
Oh,
kind of outcomes,
I
and
just think when you say this story, when I was 19, I was driving a Chrysler Fifth Ave, so it had a massive steel front end. Only reason I'm
mhm,
alive. I
mhm.
was going 90 kilometers an hour and I hit a flatbed of an 18 wheeler. And because of the metal they make old cars with, I was saved and I didn't even have to go to the hospital. But it's like I don't know why I lived when like something so horrible happened to like both of them. Like I just
Mhm,
when you hear
mhm.
stories like that, you're like, this is why I do this because people can realize why me. Maybe my living has the purpose of being able to give somebody like you a voice, because
Yeah.
that's all I want to do is give people a voice and give people understanding to these things because they're so traumatic and they're so out of your control.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I truly believe that, you're here for a purpose. I'm here for a purpose. And now we have this platform. We have an opportunity to be able to, reach others with a message and yeah. So, after everything happened, I did write a book. I spent about the next year grieving, and writing a book was my way of grieving. It started out as a journal just to try to remember who Chase was, capture a lot of his childhood memories, that sort of thing. And the more I wrote the book, the more it kind of got into what happened, what transpired that led to his death. And so eventually, decided to publish it, self-published. And that book came out in 2015. It's titled A Life Half Lived. Unfortunately, I don't have a copy right in front of me to be able to show you, but they can go to Amazon and type in A Life Half Lived.
And like besides the book, you said you do an intervention business as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So I started, I wrote that book, and then I really did not understand addiction when I wrote the book. I was just a grieving father. I was really angry, but it seems to have resonated with a lot of people. And people can order a hard copy, but they can also they can download the digital version for free. They don't even have to give me any of their information. It's just free for anybody that wants. It's had about 50,000 copies have moved, either digitally or hard copies, since it's been out there. And, so that led me, I got invites to start speaking, and I began doing prevention speaking. I did that for a long time, and I still do. When I get calls to do that, I'll go speak. And then eventually I began to facilitate a peer support group for parents who have a child battling addiction. And that's where I really began to learn more about addiction and about the proper role of the family in the recovery process, because the family, addiction affects everyone in the entire family. And the
That's why
family,
I call my show Everyone is Addicted because there's the addict and then there's
that's right.
everybody around them that's
Yeah.
affected.
Yeah, that's right. Quite often, parents will get addicted to the all the drama,
Hmm.
around trying to save their child,
Or
and
the
or they're
worry,
addicted. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
or even the
Mm.
arguments, the drama,
Yep.
like all of it. Because
Yep.
feelings can also become addictions, and they usually come from the fact of having an addicted loved one tends to build those up because your body feels that every single day. So every single day, those feelings are there. So it's like an addiction in itself. And all you want to
Yeah.
do is help, but you don't know how.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And you're right. They do get addicted to those feelings, the worry, the chronic worry, the hopelessness, the helplessness, and trying to they get into enabling and rescuing behaviors that are harmful to them and to their child. And what I've discovered is that. Um, quite often they want to set and maintain healthy boundaries, but are incapable of doing it. And it's because they lack the emotional control. And so that's really what I specialize in. I left from that peer support group. I realized that some parents needed more. I was in a facilitator role when I was facilitating that meeting, not a coaching role. So I started a coaching business, coaching parents mostly, who have a child battling addiction. And it's really the coaching business is it's called Family Recovery Coaching. So they can find me. People can find me at thefamilyrecoverycoach.com. That's my website, and I've been doing that for a little while. And mostly, I help parents um, begin to get control over their emotions so they can maintain their boundaries.
not have something happen like what happened to you because you just weren't aware of how to go about doing it, you know. I
Hmm.
think I think that that is something that is truly needed worldwide because so many of us will just say, "Oh, like I've read comments when I've talked about homeless people saying like that they never asked to be homeless and somebody's made a rude comment and I'm just like, well, that could be your child someday, and you're sitting here saying all these negative things, but you don't know what the future holds. You don't understand what you're even talking about.
That's right.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe have some compassion, you know.
Yeah.
Nobody asked for mental illness. Nobody asked to feel um emotional feeling like, you know, like feeling lack of confidence, feeling not good enough. Nobody asked to have mental health issues. None of us. And life sometimes is just hard and being taught properly, like from somebody like you, and how to deal with your child would get so many of those people off the streets because
Hmm.
then their families could properly help them, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a balance there. You know, you have to strike between compassion and still holding the boundaries.
Yeah.
You can hold boundaries and be loving and compassionate. As a family member of someone battling addiction. But yeah, in terms of the general public, I was in the same space. I did not understand addiction, and I lacked compassion. I didn't have the right attitude. But over time, that changed as I began to educate myself about addiction. And so, through some of my content that I was putting out online, an interventionist saw some of the content and liked it, and he reached out to me and he's like, "Man, you already speak our language. You should become an interventionist." And so I did go to a training, and so I'm connected with a group of interventionists. We're all independent business owners. We're not part of a large company, but
Yeah.
we work together. We collaborate. And some of those interventionists are out on the West Coast. There's one in Oregon, one in California.
Well,
I'm
even
here
for
in North.
me being in Canada, it's something that I would like to get into doing myself. And
Uh-huh.
I like I've been looking into it once, like because I'm in college full time right now, but once that program's done, I've been thinking about it more and more because my life's journey has kind of pivoted from what I thought I should
Hmm.
do, you know? And
Hmm.
it's just more of a calling for me to do this kind of stuff. It's always been in my life and something I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to help people understand, and I've always wanted to give back and also teach people to set boundaries and all those things that you're saying, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I was like, oh, I'm going to take accounting. But accounting, my life hasn't taken me down that path. I've been in documentaries, I've been in books, I've been in, I have a show, I have a podcast, and it was all just through the fact that my daughter's father almost died over Christmas of a pneumonia or whatever, right? And
Uh-huh.
it just sparked that real passion in me of what because I always never really knew what I wanted to do. I've been to school for everything under the
Uh-huh.
sun. You couldn't even
Uh-huh.
imagine, right? But I once I found like something I liked, it also gives you that confidence back and it also helps you stay sober when you're also your mission is to help other people stay sober. You're going to want to stay sober and show them that no
Hmm.
matter how hard life is, because trust me, life's pretty freaking hard sometimes, you can stay sober and you can also make sure that your family is not unaffected by like because I have a drinking problem. If I would have drank through all these things going on, that would just affect my children, which then again would lead down the line to something similar that would happen to Chase because I don't know how to do it properly. So that's why I just really love the fact that all of the things you do. So you said, sorry, I got off track because I do word soup. I talk a lot, sorry, but
No, you're
so
good.
you said you're like a group of them, but you're not a company, right? So basically, like, do you have like a website where somebody could go on and like look at
Yes.
each person
Yes.
and figure out who
Hmm.
they'd like to have as an interventionist?
Yes. Yes. It's called intervention on call. And so what they can do, families can book a session with us for $150 an hour. And what we recommend is that, we have some of us will do this where we can have like a 20 to 30-minute phone conversation prior to that. So what we recommend is that they bring as many of the team members for their intervention as they can to that first call, that first for to make the most of that $150 an hour, that 1 hour session. Because what we're going to do is we're going to begin, helping them write their letters. We're going to begin organizing the team, get everyone on the same page, pulling together, help them, begin to pick out a treatment center if they haven't already picked one out. Help them understand what kind of things they need to look for. When I say help them pick one out, we may offer several suggestions. We want them to ultimately pick it out, but we start the process, and then we want to equip them through that to be able to do their own intervention. But a lot of people, they start looking at everything and they go, I really need a mediator. I really need an interventionist on site to help me. And so, not a lot of people are capable of do or really want to do their own intervention. So they'll
Yeah,
hire one of us to
I've
come
done
in.
it, and it doesn't, you need that mediator there
Mm.
because it's that other voice, that cuts
Yeah,
through all
yeah,
the family. Well, blah, 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 and you did this to me
right.
10
Yeah.
years ago and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It helps to have someone who is really not as emotionally attached and is kind of has a calm demeanor and can de-escalate, the situation and prevent people from arguing and all of that and help the family really communicate in the way that's going to be compassionate, loving, and effective. Communicate those boundaries and I can tell you, um, I've had people who we were intervening on get right up in my face and yelling and screaming at me, and
You got
it
that
just
military background though, so it don't mess
yeah,
with
it
you.
doesn't affect me. It doesn't. You between the military and just everything I went through with Chase, it's like you can't what your words can't hurt me.
Yeah.
It'll take a lot more than that. So I'm able to maintain an even keel through all of that, and still be loving and compassionate towards that person, no matter what they say to me. And so um, and then, I mean, there's been some other really crazy things like, just like Chase jumped out the window.
That's a
I've had them.
popular one.
Yeah. And that's happened to me, where a young man climbed out the window but the parents, I think, particularly if it's parents involved, they get really scared, and it's like I'm able to say, okay, we need to change the locks, and we need to send him a message and say, hey, you're not getting back in. We'll meet you outside, or we'll meet you around back, or whatever, and we'll have a conversation, but you're not coming back in the house.
Yeah.
And they a lot of people would not be able to hold that boundary
No.
without an interventionist there. It would
I
just
know
be
I wouldn't. If it was my son crying and bawling his eyes out, mommy,
right.
please, I'd be like, oh, it would be very hard to hold strong. Like if there was in
Yeah.
that situation, I would want an interventionist because I know myself, and I also know my kid's father would be the same way and be like, oh, one more time, but
Right,
then that
right,
could be
yeah.
your last time.
Yeah, and you can believe that that young man, he did come back and he did have a conversation with us outside the house, the one I'm describing right now, and he thought of every reason possible that he needed to get back into that house, and he presented everything. And I was there with the family to be able to say no and hold our ground. And guess what? At the end of the day, he got in the car with me, and his father drove us to the airport, and he got on the airplane, and I dropped him off at treatment. So it's a very rewarding experience for me as an interventionist, and as a father who lost his son, to be able to help another family get their child into treatment. But that's not the end of the road. That's really just the beginning, and that's where the family really needs to dive into their work and I can help them get stronger. And I'm staying in contact with the family and making sure that this young man is getting the treatment that he needs, and that
Yeah.
the family is hopefully going to get the outcome that they need. I'm equipping them with the tools that they need to be able to do that. So really, what it comes down to for me now, what I do is I do the family recovery coaching, which is helping the parents cope with the emotions and helping them move ahead and get stronger, and be able to maintain the boundaries. And I do the interventions when the interventions are needed, and I'd still do some speaking. I hope to write another book soon. I've got a lot more knowledge now about addiction. I hope to write another book about this topic. I just haven't had time recently. I've been really busy. But the book will be, it's in the works.
Well,
But that's kind of where I am with everything.
well, definitely keep me informed with the book. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you sharing so much with us because I know there's so many parents.
I do want to say this too, Jasmine. This group of interventionists on intervention on call that I work with, we have interventionists all around the U.S. Like I was saying, but I mean, there's only about six of us right now, six or seven, but we pretty much cover the whole U.S. And but we don't have anybody in Canada yet, so.
Well, my mother-in-law, whose son is an addict, would be all over it. So we'll be
Yeah.
spreading word in Canada, trust me.
We're
So
willing to travel there in the meantime, but yeah, it would be great if we had an interventionist in Canada. Um, but thank you for having me on. I appreciate
thank
you
you.
inviting me on your show. Yeah, it was a pleasure to be here with you today.
Well, I appreciate it. And yeah, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
So, if you live in Grant County and you are struggling either to stay sober or are struggling to find sobriety, you have a few options. If you're struggling to find sobriety, the RAM Clinic offers so much you wouldn't believe it. And the people that work there are so kind. And if you are coming off of benzodiazepines or coming off of alcohol, it could be lethal, to be honest. So try to get into detox. If not detox, go to the emergency. And there are also NA, CA, and Celebrate Recovery meetings going on all over the city every day, all day to help you if you need that as well. And the last one that can provide you with a ton of resources is SOAR. So if you're in the area, those are the places to look for resources and help. Also, I'd like to dedicate this episode to Chase Rogers, who left our earth far too soon because of this horrible epidemic. And I love Darryl and the strength that he has to keep going and help others. So thank you. And I appreciated you coming on today. And yeah, dedicated to Chase Rogers.